lecture tonight. We are going to focus now on topic number 2, on public and private procurement. We introduced the module. I believe you've been able to follow up the discussion that we introduced. So today it's a follow-up conversation around public procurement process. We want to know, when we are undertaking public procurement activities, what are the steps that we go through until and as when the tender is awarded to a particular supplier to be able to do the work, to be able to supply the goods, and to be able to undertake any other services, including non-consultancy services. So this is a major and a very critical area of discussion. We already defined public procurement, but we are reminding ourselves and saying that is the method by which governments and public sector organizations acquire goods and services from external suppliers. Remember, when we talk about the issues of the usage of goods and services, we usually say that the government is one of the huge consumers of goods and services and other works. And therefore, we need to have a streamlined process on how the government needs or will be able to acquire these goods. So that's the reason why we introduced the procurement process. And we're also saying that public procurement is also a structured way and regulated process designed to ensure fairness. We already mentioned that in our previous lecture in terms of the principles of procurement. So we have come up with a process so that we can ensure that we have fairness, we have transparency, and also we are having competitiveness in terms of choosing the one who is going to serve us or to provide goods and services for governments. And at the end of the day, we also want to ensure value for money. The government is also in the process of ensuring, or is in the activity of ensuring public resources are well utilized. And therefore, even as we seek for different goods and services, then we have also to ensure that the process is transparent and it has been able to meet the set criteria. So we are saying the public procurement process is a cycle. When you are talking about a process, we are referring to a cycle, or what we can also call the key steps that are required by government when they are procuring goods and services. And this conversation that we are having is not out of the blues. They are not things that have just been sat down and prepared. We are relying very much to understand this particular topic being guided by the Public Procurement and Disposal Assets Law or Regulations of 2018. I would want you to take time and look for this document because it's a huge document. Get to understand other issues around procurement. So these regulations are critical in terms of us understanding the process. So what happens in stage number 1? Now, in stage number 1, we do what we call procurement planning and budgeting. And in this particular stage, it is where now we come up with a plan. And in this particular plan, we are determining everything that we are going to need in the future for an organization X. Remember, a government is huge. We have ministries, we have departments, we have people consuming goods and services at the state level. And therefore, we need to have a procurement plan that is going to ensure that everything that we are going to need for a particular maybe financial year has been very well planned. And we also in the plan need to capture the timing of their acquisition and determining the source of funds. That is very, very crucial. So all user departments based on approval are going to prepare departmental procurement plans. So you can see we are narrowing down to be able to do these. User departments are the departments that intend to use these goods and services whenever they are delivered. Yeah, so once the user department has come up with a plan, then they submit it to the procurement and disposing unit, what we are calling the PDU. Then after that, within the stage one, the PDU for each financial year prepares an annual procurement plan for the procuring and disposing entities, or what we are calling PDE. So once the PDU receives user department plans, now they come up with a full year plan now, entailing or bringing on board all user departments and their requests in terms of goods and services. And then the user department now is going to notify the PDU, which we have said is the procurement and disposing unit, of any change in the procurement plan. Maybe along the way you have decided to change the usage of a particular item. I see sometimes governments cancelling the use of what those items that may not really be declared as necessities. The issue of having flowers in offices, the issue of having carpets, and those other things. We can always delete such kind of issues on our procurement plan. So if we are having such kind of a deletion, then the user departments, those that prepare the plan, have to notify the procurement and disposing unit. And the purpose of this particular procurement plan, finally, we are saying we cannot be able to order anything outside the plan that was prepared by the user departments. So it is very, very important to stick to the plan. And then stage number 2, we are going to be doing procurement requisition. So this particular stage is going to kickstart the implementation of the procurement plan. So all the user departments within government are going to initiate a request of approval of procurement. And before this is done, there are certain conditions that must be met. For example, you need to have provided a description of the requirements of services, works, and supplies. When we are talking about the description, it could be in line with specifications. What are the specifications of the goods that you are ordering? When we are talking about specifications, we are referring in the context of the technical specifications. For example, if we are ordering computers, quality standards. Remember, we do not want to do back and forth when we are procuring goods, but we are procuring every 4 months a new computer. So the aspect of quality standards is also very, very important. And also quantity requirements. All those are descriptions that we can do in terms of the goods and services. So quantity requirements, if we are talking about computers, for instance, how many are they? We can be able to ask that under the conditions here for stage number 2. Then another very critical issue that we need to capture is the estimated value of requirements based on market price. So we need to do pricing now. And finally, the user prepares the request, and the head of department is going to confirm the procurement request. So the user departments forward them to the procurement department. They are going to confirm everything has been done right. And then also we have also to confirm the availability of funding from the accounting officer. For those countries that have ministers, for example, and others have PSS. Yeah, so those are deemed to be the accounting officers in the ministry, and they can now be able to confirm whether the funds are available. We do not want to invite bids of money that the government is going to pay in 10 years. So it is also good to confirm the availability of funds. And what we have still emphasized in stage number 1, whatever we have requested must also be seen in our procurement plan. Then stage number 3, what we need to do, we need to choose a procurement method. We are going to also be discussing that as part of our very, very important slides as we wind up. So it is at this particular stage that we choose the procurement method, and we are saying it is determined in accordance with the schedule of the Act. I have just talked about the Act that we are referring to over and over again, the 2018 guidelines. And when we are choosing the procurement method, then what are we basing the choice of the method with? We are looking at number 1, the estimated value of the requirement. So how much is it likely to cost, whatever that we are ordering? And we also consider the circumstances pertaining the requirement. Uh, we have single source, probably we have a supplier that we have been relying on, that is single sourcing, or is it a product that is an emergency? For example, during COVID, governments really did a lot of ordering on emergency basis. And then finally is the type of procurement, whether supplies, works, or non-consultancy services. When we are talking about non-consultancy services, we are referring to management kind of services, services that revolve around maintenance of facilities, e.g. buildings, transportation and logistics. Those ones are referred to as non-consultancy services. And now we have this number of procurement methods that are highlighted here. So when we are deciding on the method, then we can use either what we call open domestic method of procurement, restricted domestic method of procurement, request for proposal, or sole sourcing or single sourcing. Now, when we are talking about open domestic, we simply say that, or we simply mean that the suppliers or vendors do not have a restriction in terms of nationality or location. So this one is open to everyone, whether you are within the borders of that particular country, or whether you are a nationality or you are not a nationality of that country. That's why we are calling it open domestic. Yeah. So the difference between that and the one that we are calling restricted domestic method, when we are talking about restricted, then it is solely restricted for the domestic suppliers. Those suppliers that are based on that particular country that the government is doing the procurement process, or the government is ordering goods from. The first one, open, suppliers or vendors, there is no restriction in terms of nationality or location. But on the restricted one, we only want to depend on suppliers who are based in that particular country. Then we have what we call another method that we can use is what we call a request for proposal. Now, a request for proposal is simply a document that or a communique that is issued by the procuring entity or the government to solicit for proposals, or to do what we call to invite proposals from potential suppliers. That's why we are calling it a request for proposal. So it is a request for from the organization or from the government to all interested vendors and suppliers to be able to provide proposals for review. So in those proposals, we want to know how much in terms of pricing are you quoting your products, and so on and so forth. And finally, when we talk about sole or single sourcing, so the buyers, the organization that is procuring, is going to select a single supplier. or it's going to select a single vendor to be able to supply the product. This is an area that I would really like you to do research on. Also, try and understand the benefits and disadvantages of each of these methods. That is going to assist you to open up your mind around this particular area. Then step number 4, we do the preparation of bidding documents. So the preparation of bidding documents or pre-qualification documents and notices is the responsibility of the PDU. We have said the PDU is the procuring and disposal unit. The procuring and disposal unit. And then once the PDU prepares the documents and pre-qualifications, then the contracts committee is going to approve. And then the procuring and disposal unit, the PDU, is going to effect changes to the instructions to bidders in the bid data sheet. We could be having some amendments that we need to make. And then the procuring and disposal unit also is going to complete special conditions of the contract. There could be some uniqueness around the contract that we want it to be very well captured. Yeah, so a statement of requirements are modified as may be required. So we have what we call TORs, that is what we call the terms of references. We need to modify. So if a supplier brings an item, we also need to make sure it has met our requirements. And that will be very, very crucial for you to be able to do. And also when we are talking about SOWs, we are meaning that it stands for Statement of Works. This SOW or this Statement of Works, it particularly clarifies the work or how the work is to be performed. Are there any drawings? I also gave an example of buildings. So are there any drawings? We need also to be able to see that, or any other forms of specifications. They can be included in this particular stage. Then stage number 5, then we are going to be doing bidding methods stroke advertisement. Now the PDE, which is the procurement and disposing entity, is going to invite a bidder to bid through. So inviting bidders means we are inviting everyone that is interested. So how do we go about it? We can run advertisements, probably in the print media. I'm sure you could be able to see what your government is doing in terms of these things that we are discussing. These adverts are always going to be there. Remember, I began to say that the government is one of the huge consumers of goods and services. So these are very, very critical step. So under this step, then we do publication of a bid notice. This one is published in at least one newspaper for wide circulation. So we could look for a newspaper that is widely circulated, maybe a national newspaper. We could make sure we have an advert there. Then development of a short list. At least 3 bidders are invited to ensure competition. And also within this particular stage, under direct invitation of a sole or single provider. And the need is to be able to verify that a sole source provider exists and ensure that the sole bidder is eligible and qualified before recommending the source. So at this particular stage, we are not leaving anything to chance. Even as we go ahead and advertise, we could also have a single supplier around, just in case the rest are not able to meet the requirements and the specifications. We can still be able to have a fallback option. Then stage number 6 is where we do receipt and bid opening. So the PDE or the procurement and disposing entity is going to receive bids now. And so these are now proposals from potential suppliers, and we are saying through the staff of the PDU, which is the procuring and disposing unit, in person who shall acknowledge receipt by use of a bid box. So if you go to government offices, you are going to find these bid boxes. It means if I want to bid to supply milk, the government of South Sudan, then there's a place I need to drop my bid, my documentation. And that is the bid box. You're going to find that outside very many government organizations, especially during the tendering season. And the PD, which is the procurement and disposing entity, is going to fill the form for record of bids received and signed. So any bids that have been received also need to be recorded. Remember, we talked about the principle of transparency. Remember, we talked about the principle of transparency. So we record every bid that we have received. And we are saying this process of opening is managed by the PDU, the Procuring and Disposal Unit, and other staff around the unit. And then we also go ahead and record bid opening. Now, when we are doing bid opening, of course, we have invited all the bidders to come and witness as we open. We do not want to hear issues of there was no transparency and such kind of other issues. Yeah, so the information is read out to all the bidders. So name of the bidder, bid security, which is the amount that they have, and what is the total price that they are quoting for whatever goods, services, works, or whatever that is being they are bidding for. So that is information is known to everyone. Once we do that, number 7, we do the evaluation of bids. And in this particular process, we aim to determine the best evaluated bid. And the evaluation of bids, we are saying we have a committee that is in charge of that, the committee that we call the EC. Now, why are we doing evaluation of the bids? Or why are we evaluating the considered bid? Number 1, we want to ensure that this supplier or this vendor is complying with the SORs. That's very, very important. We need to ensure this person has met all the criteria. And SORs, it simply means the statement of requirements. There is a statement that was issued in terms of what is expected. So have we complied, or has the bidder complied with all that is being listed? Remember, when we are doing specifications for things like computers, there are specific specifications and wordings. So we need to confirm that. Ability, number 2, is the ability of the bidder to perform the proposed contract. So how do we know the ability of the bidder? Number 1, we can be able to look at the experience of other works that they have done. Remember also, when you are doing procurement with the government, there are requirements, for example, that they state that the company that is supposed to do that work must have been in existence for a number of years. In Kenya, for example, they talk about 3 years. Yeah. So we can also look at the quality of clients that you have been serving, whom we have the right to consult and find out information about you and your ability to supply. And finally is the ability of the bid to meet the objectives of the procurement. Yeah. So you as a bidder, are you able to meet the objectives of the procurement? Now, when we are doing evaluation, there are a number of things that we need to take into consideration. Number A is evaluation is as per evaluation criteria. So we have a yardstick of expectations that we need you as a supplier, as a vendor to be able to meet. So as we are considering or evaluating, we have to make sure this is happening as per the criteria that is stated. We also need to have, when you are doing evaluation of the bids, we need to have evaluation methodologies as per the PPDA regulations. I've said that is the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets. It is the regulations of 2018. And we have agreed you also need to download them and read. It is quite a huge document, but there are methods that are very well stipulated there. We have mentioned some of them in one of the slides. So all members of the EC signed the code of conduct of the business. Yeah, so every member of the committee, evaluation committee, is going to have a sign code of conduct. A code of conduct means then when you are evaluating, you need to avoid issues to do biasness, you need to avoid favoritism, you need to avoid any forms of corruption around those particular activities of evaluation. In stage number 8, in the public procurement process, then we want to now award the contract. Of course, from the evaluation bit, we are able to ascertain who. So now we want to award the contract on step number 8. So the PDE, which is the procurement and disposing entity, is going to place a notice of the best evaluated bidder. So we place another notice or another advert confirming the best bidder. And also we do debriefing of unsuccessful bidders. It means those that have been unsuccessful. Debriefing means you also have to sit down with them and explain, so how did you arrive at the best evaluated bidder? That's very, very important. Now, sometimes when we do not do debriefing of unsuccessful bidders, what are the consequences? Number one, we could have litigation. We could have these unsuccessful bidders taking the government institution or the government to court. And you know what that means? If maybe we were requesting for supply of works, maybe construction of roads, then that simply means we are going to have that road stalling until that case is heard and determined. So the stage, this particular stage number 8 on where we need to do debriefing is very, very important for you to be able to do it. And then we are saying after that, a PDU, or which is the Procuring and Disposal Unit, is going to submit a recommendation for award of contract to the CC after completion of evaluation. And then it's like we are reminding now in the contract, we need to state the requirements such as packaging, we need to be specific about that. Contract pricing, we need to be very specific. Payment terms, all those things must be stipulated in the contract. And whether there is anything to do with advance payment, it can also be very clear in the contract. Then we go to contract management. Remember, we are issuing the contract. So this is going to involve receipt, inspection of goods, works, and services procured. So once we receive the goods, in this particular stage, we also have the monitoring of payments, submitting reports to the PDU, CCC, AO, that is monthly reports, progress reports. In short, within the process, there is also, because of the aspect of transparency, then we need to know what is happening around in terms of even the usage of goods once you receive them. And then we evaluate performance of the vendors and the suppliers against what was stated. In case there are any anomalies or issues in relation to the goods, then the technical staff needs to be informed. Yeah, and then contracts amended or amends are approved by the contracts committee. That's what we are referring to as the CC. Then we do performance review. So access, we need to, in this particular stage, we are checking, the compliance to quantity, quality, and delivery period. We will also be able to monitor progress of work to ensure that all the milestones have been achieved. And then we do contract review meetings. These meetings are also very, very crucial. Yeah, and in these meetings, then the key intention is to be able to identify the control action that is to be taken. So those steps are very, very critical, and they are going to determine whether, as a government institution or entity, you are able to adhere to the procurement processes. And also, because we have specifications, issues around quality, once you follow the procedures very well, you can be able to succeed. So yesterday we mentioned the principles of public procurement. There are quite a number of them. So these principles are the ones that are clarified here in terms of transparency. Every process must be carried out in a transparent manner, where stakeholders have access to relevant information. And that's why we are also talking about debriefing of those that are unsuccessful. That's very, very important also. Yeah. So so the aspect of transparency, when you call those that are unsuccessful and sit them down and tell them this is the reason why your bid was not successful. We also have the principle of fairness and non-discrimination. So we are saying public procurement must be fair and non-discriminatory. So all potential suppliers, you treat them equally, and provide them with a level playing field. Once you do that, then this particular law or principle is well taken care of. We have competition. So all matters around public procurement, we need to foster competition among suppliers. And the reason why we foster competition or encourage competition, we are going to promote efficiency, we are going to promote innovation, we are going to promote and ensure also we get value for our money. And that means now, because of competition, we need to encourage as many people as possible to bid and give them a level playing ground. We are saying let's avoid any forms of anti-competitive practices when it comes to competition. Anti-competitive prices is like me coming to tell you, because I'm in the government side, this is the budget for this particular project. So make sure you quote a lesser amount than that. And then also we have the principle of accountability. This is also very important, where we hold procurement officials responsible for their actions. We have had very many instances where procurement officials have found themselves in trouble. Reason because they have been, for example, bribed or they are asking for a kickback for them to be able to award a certain contract to a particular individual. Yeah. So to be able to avoid issues around that, then all documents must be present. That in case even the unqualified, those that have not qualified, the bidders, the ones that we were saying we need to debrief them, in case anyone goes to court, then with our well documented process and series of steps that we have followed, we can be able to use that to be able to defend ourselves against anyone who has brought that issue. We also have the principle of integrity and ethics. All affairs around public procurement, they need to uphold the highest standards of integrity and ethical conduct. These will revolve around prohibiting bribery, any forms of corruption, conflicts of interests. Very many times you will find government officials are still the owners of those companies. Some also use proxies or third parties. So they want the tender to be awarded to them. Yeah. So that's around the principle of integrity and ethics. And also we talked about the principle for value for money. Even as we go throughout this process, the main reason is that the public finances or the money available could be prudently utilized. Other principles are the principles of efficiency and effectiveness. We are saying anything around procurement should be conducted in a very efficient and an effective manner. You cannot advertise a bid, for example, and stay for 2 years, 3 years. You have never given people feedback in relation to what are the results, who qualified for the bid. That's not being efficient. So we need to have very clear and streamlined processes. We can also embrace technology where appropriate within the process, and all our procurement activities also, part of being efficient is to ensure that they align with the organizational objective or the government's objective. And also the need for you to observe the principle of compliance with laws and regulations. So the public procurement must adhere to applicable laws, and these are conducted within the legal framework, promoting accountability and preventing misuse of funds. I gave an example of the Public Procurement and Disposal Assets Act or law or regulations. Those are very, very critical. Now, most of the time when you do not adhere to those regulations, maybe you want to cut corners as a government institution or as a company. There are, of course, consequences. If by bad chance you find yourself that you've been sued, then the court will also be asking you to answer the question of whether you followed the regulations. So we need to be very keen in terms of those regulations. Now, we're also saying public procurement methods are different, the different approaches and procedures used by governments. These methods, or the public procurement methods, their key aim is to promote competition, transparency and efficiency. So now we are going back to some methods that were in one of the slides that I verbally explained, but they were just in point form. So we have methods like what we call open tendering and bidding. So this kind of bidding is as a result of a public advertisement that has been put on our on print media. So it could also mean it is open to everyone. So you can always apply for the bid. And then we also have open international. This is used instead of open domestic bidding, where competition will not be effective without foreign bidders. remember the one that we said it can also be called open domestic method. So yes, it is open to those that are within the country, but once it now becomes open international, then we can also open to foreign bidders. Remember, there are foreign bidders that we can maybe say they do a better and a more efficient job. We also have another method we call selective tendering, and in this kind of a method, whoever is procuring will invite a pre-selected group of suppliers to submit bid proposals. Remember, organizations are going to singly run advertisements for inviting, we call them the pre-qualification of suppliers. There may not be anything necessarily to be supplied at that particular moment, but we want to have a database of these suppliers. So when do we use this database of the suppliers that we pre-qualified? It is when we are using this method of selective tendering. Yeah, so we look among the people that we already have on our database, and we choose one. Of course, we consider the aspects of qualifications, past performance, and we also consider other expertise. And we are saying this method is often used when a limited number of suppliers are capable of providing the required goods. Then we have the request for proposals that I had mentioned. We are saying it is used on more complex projects. And these projects could be, for example, projects that we are seeking to have innovative solutions or expertise from a particular group of suppliers. It could be something very unique. So because we may not have anybody on our database, we could invite through the request for proposals. So we are simply telling those that think are potential vendors and suppliers to be able to supply or provide proposals first. Then we are going to evaluate them. Then we have another term that we call request quotation. We are saying it is used for procuring goods or services with well-defined specifications. And when we are using request for quotation, then products or goods around the market are relatively standardized. So standardized means there could be some form of uniformity in terms of pricing. So the organization or the government, when it's requesting for quotations, they are requesting companies to provide different pricing for their goods and services and any other forms of works from potential suppliers. And when we use this method, also, how do we determine the supplier or the vendor to choose? Then we consider the one who has quoted the lowest price, or the one who is giving you the best in terms of value for money. Then we have what we call direct contracting. In certain circumstances, direct contracting may be allowed. And this method involves the direct selection of specific suppliers without competitive bidding. So when you are doing this, when you are using this method, we are not solely relying on a large pool of suppliers. This particular method, we are going to use it when we only have one supplier who is able to provide required goods or services. Or also in the cases of emergencies that I had given examples of during COVID season, we could also use the method of direct contracting. We are also saying, as we wind up, the public procurement process is going to involve several stakeholders who play different roles. So the process involves a number of people. Like we saw when we were beginning, what we were calling the user departments, or the specific department that is going to be using the item. Other players in the process is the procurement and disposal unit. We have already mentioned that, the PDU. The accounts department is also, or the finance department is also very crucial. Remember, when it is time to pay the suppliers and vendors, this particular department becomes of essence and very, very important. And also the contract committee, it's another player, the one that we were calling CC, and the evaluation committee, EC, the one that evaluates the bid, and the PPDA tribunal, or the Public Procurement and Disposal Act tribunal. Now, this tribunal has, of course, been established to receive any complaints from the unsatisfied bidders. So it could listen to the issues that have been raised by these people, and maybe provide a solution as to whatever issues they could be complaining. Maybe there are some considerations that were not done. So these are very, very critical stakeholders. We cannot do the procurement process without involving them. Now, we have the documents that are used in the procurement process. Procurement requisition. So that one is a request for goods. The procurement plan, remember this was among our first stages. We can do inquiries. We can also have purchase orders, delivery notes. Delivery notes, of course, is documentation that is provided by the supplier, indicating that these are the goods that we have received. And then also a goods received note is on the organization or the government entity procuring. It's also to indicate that there is matching between what the delivery note is indicating and what you have received. So I would also invite you to do research around this documentation, the 6 of them. Find out at what point are they used. That's the assignment of this particular discussion or module. When do we use each of these documents? Purchase orders, delivery notes, goods received notes. We have others, number 7. This should be number 7, quotations, proposals, pro forma invoices. So find out when do we use these particular documents. Order acknowledgements. When you release and place an order, the supplier is also required to acknowledge that they have received the order. Remember, there's something very important we call the lead time. Sometimes somebody might fail to acknowledge the order, then there is no communication. We end up spending a lot of time before we receive the goods. Invoices, goods returned note. Sometimes we could be having goods that are defective. This act is very, very specific. If you have supplied to me computers and they are not working or they are defective, then I cannot just return them like that, or just come to your office and place them there. They are not working. No, I need to fill that information on the goods returned note to indicate that there was a return that happened of a particular good or item. And finally, all forms of receipts. All forms of receipts that are going to be showing that this transaction took place. So that is going to bring us to the end of the discussion. There was an hand that was up, Mr. Richard or Mr.